Do you know the difference between investing in a real estate deal or buying a house? Well, that is what we are going to talk about in today's episode of the Never Lose a Deal podcast. Welcome. I am your podcast host, Brown-Phillips. And as always, this podcast is for real estate investors who desire to scale and expand their real estate portfolio using creative financing. And on this show, I talk about different financing strategies that you can apply and add to your repertoire of real estate investing. And so today I am talking about the art of the deal. And before I start with the topic of the art of the deal, I titled this podcast episode as The Rise of FinInfuencers and the Art of the Deal, because I want to kind of touch on both topics. But before I go into the art of the deal, before I start going into are you buying a house or are you investing in a deal, I kind of just want to touch on the finfluencer space because the finfluencer space is the motivation of why I decided to do this podcast episode. So now we are in a time in reality where the internet has a very strong influence on people's buying habits, people's decisions in life. And so back in 2024 is when I came across the title as finfluencers. And if you don't know what a finfluencer is, it is a person who is an influencer, but they are in the space of personal finance, financial literacy, anything that has to impact your money. Well, in 2024, as I begin to read articles, even some of the very large platforms, I won't call them out, begin to talk about them, it had me to really lean in. And so a lot of these articles talked about how now anyone who has a cell phone, anyone who has a computer can pretty much go out into the marketplace and give individuals advice on investing or personal finance or buying a home or anything in the gamut of personal finance and financial literacy. And so that is just where we're at. And whether you like it or not, 9 times out of 10, you or someone you know will be heavily influenced by someone online and the advice that they give. Now, this episode is not to give scrutiny to those who do desire to put their expertise, if they have any, on the internet, but it is to kind of shed some light on some of the things that I've seen. So, like I said, it may be you or it could be someone you know who will get influenced by someone that they are watching online. And so many of these articles talked about as the rise continue, there needs to be some type of things put in place to be able to measure the responsibility of what is being put out on the internet. And just like with the medical field, doctors or any medical professional cannot just go, on social media, online, and just spew a whole bunch of stuff. They have regulating authorities that do manage that. And I feel like in the financial space, there should be some type of regulation in regards to that as well. And I never forget years ago, I had a business mentor who used to say, who's certifying the certifier? Because the first thing when people say, oh, there's going to be regulating parties to regulate the industry, well, then that's just a way for those regulators to make money. And by all means, I'm over that conversation. I mean, of course, yes, you do need money to help things to run, but also there needs to be precautions that are put in place for people who do take this advice because some people are being harmed. That leads me into what I want to talk about today, which has to do with the art of the deal. So recently, and it happens to me on a weekly basis where someone will reach out to me, and I've said this on other podcast episodes where they or have either listened to someone or went to their master class or what the case may be, and they need some context or clarity of the situation. Now, what I've started to do is I will run them right back to the person or the people's who told them that if they're not a client of mine, I have no desire, as well as people that I know personally, I have no desire to help you to get context of something that you heard. Unfortunately, you just have to go back to that individual. But if you're my client, by all means, we can deep dive on the whole situation. So I say this to say, um, recently, had someone who came to me for some housing financing advice. And once again, I know my place and my expertise. And so when I had this consultation with the person, what we had figured out, because I told them that if this is a purchase that they wanted to make, this is what is necessary. This is the financial outlay that is going to take in order for them to move forward with the financing. And so I recommended them to someone in the space that can help them move forward with the purchase that they wanted to make in real estate. Because once again, I don't work in the place of to get FHA because this person can possibly be a candidate for FHA. Because although they owned something and they bought it a few years ago, back in like 2020, but they bought it with conventional financing, so that would allow them to still be a candidate for FHA. So I recommended them to that person that I thought was a capable person. Well, lo and behold, what I found out was that person wasn't that capable. And let's just say they were given some really bad advice that could have hurt them financially. Why it could have hurt them financially? One, because due to the age of that individual, the person had shared with me, and I took that into account, that they were close to retiring and that they wanted to be able to invest in several rental properties, and this is what they had desired to be able to do, along with they had a retirement plan that they had been investing in. And so after finding out that where they were and, with what they desired and where they were financially in terms of the goals they had in retirement, it just made sense for them to go into an FHA situation if it worked for them because the down payment would not be that large. And you've heard me say in many episodes that when you are in the space of investor financing, you are going to put down 20% or higher. And so, well, lo and behold, the advice that they end up getting from the mortgage professional could have literally hurt them if they would have moved forward. Although they didn't have the financial expertise to understand all the moving parts, they knew it didn't sound right. And because they made that investment to work with someone like myself, they came back to me to get clarity on that. And I advised them based on what they had shared with me that that was really bad advice due to what it is that they wanted to do financially. I get it. A lot of people won't admit this who are in the mortgage financing industry, but at the end of the day, it is a commission industry. And so what that means is that the next real estate transaction is based on commission. So there are people who are in that space that are not looking to advise. They are just looking to do what it is, do a transaction to get a commission. And that is why I titled this video, The Art of the Deal, because you have to know the difference between buying a house and investing in a deal. There is a difference. And that's why I talked about FinInfuencers, because now I'm even seeing it online where people are now saying buying a house is a deal. That's not a deal. Just because you bought a house, and don't get me wrong, if that is what you're doing, you're house hacking to be able to build wealth. Many people have did it, but buying a house with a house hacking strategy, what is house hacking? Is the ability to buy some type of rental property where you will live in one unit, whether it's a duplex, triplex, or what have you, fourplex, and you will rent out the other units to be able to build wealth and get some type of rental income, and you may even cash flow, but it doesn't mean that you have bought a deal. And so what I see a lot of people who desire investor financing, they want to be able to go into the space of creative financing, but creative financing allows you to be creative because you know what a deal looks like. And a deal looks like, what are you buying? And is that purchase a deal? And there are many moving parts with deciding if it's a deal. It has to do with the ARV. It has to do with how much equity is in the deal. It has to do with a lot of things, but it has to do with analysis. And people think that, oh, I just want to buy a house. Okay, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with building a real estate portfolio with just buying a house. But understand there's a difference, because going back to what I said, with mortgage financing being an industry that is commission based, there are no mortgage professionals who are literally going to help you figure out if you have a deal, along with creatively sit with you to figure out if they can build the deal for you to get creative financing. It doesn't exist. Not if that mortgage professional solely is working as a commissioned base professional. Fight me if you want. Some people in the mortgage industry will agree, and some would say otherwise. But understand there is a difference between advisory and getting a mortgage. Doesn't matter if it's a mortgage, whether if you're getting a mortgage or financing, or fix to flip, or fix to rent, or DSCR, or what have you. At the end of the day, when you are in that space, or even with construction, deal analysis is important. You just buying a house, conventional or FHA or USDA or VA loans, you're buying a house. Deal analysis is not necessary. It's not necessary. What is necessary is you qualifying. If you qualify to buy that house, by all means, you can buy that house. But when you're investing in real estate and there is some deal analysis that is necessary, if you want that creative financing that you're hearing on the internet, then analysis is going to have to take part, because the lender is looking at the deal. They're making their decisions based on the deal. They're not making their decisions based on your debt to income ratio and, do you have a job or what have you. Now, do you need to have some things in place in terms of, yes, do they want to know when you're doing deal analysis? Do you have the ability to be even if that particular asset can cash flow, does have equity or what have you, but they do want to make sure that you as a person have the ability to be able to finance that in the event that something goes wrong, because those things are taken into account too. And a lot of times a lot of people aren't talking about it when it comes to the internet, and that's where the finfluencer comes in at. It is easy to just turn on the phone and just spew information when there is no regulating body who's regulating you. And then also when you may think that you're not causing harm to the person who is on the other side of the phone or the computer. That is why I wanted to have this conversation. I say all that to say The Art of the Deal, which is a book that was written by someone that a lot of people don't care for currently. But I say that to say not to talk about the book and who authored it, but to talk about deal analysis is something that is necessary, because people want a lot of the things they hear about on the internet. You may even hear them on this podcast. But when I am working with someone, because I tell people there are two areas of my business. There's the side where it's very transaction. You need a mortgage, we can get you that mortgage. But understand, I don't have to qualify that person. So a lot of things that I did in the past year is really all automated. As long as you have the necessary information that is needed, a term sheet can be issued to you so you can move forward with that transaction, whether it's a fix to flip, fix to rent, DSCR. At the end of the day, that can happen. It doesn't require me to do any type of analysis with you. But then there is the advisory portion of what it is that I do. And that is for a person who wants another set of eyes, someone who can, be able to look at some of the blind spots that they may be missing, along with being able to assist them to creatively put a deal together. Because there may be some things that I may be able to share with you based on things that I know the lender will require. But that's advisory, and that's something totally separate. That's not the same as when you just need financing. You just need financing. Okay, that's easy. Tell me about your deal, get you a term sheet. You like the terms, we move forward. You close on the property, and voila, everything is there. So that leads me to the end of this episode. So that is what I wanted to talk about today, which has to do with finfluencers and the art of the deal. Really stressing that if creative financing is something you desire for 2026, you really want to understand. And like I said, there is no one way to creatively do a deal. When I talk about creative financing, it has to do with the non-traditional ways that people buy real estate. The traditional way is what most people are familiar with, which is widely talked about on the internet. Qualifying for a mortgage, qualification, you qualifying for a mortgage. But when a creative financing is not about you qualifying, it's about your deal qualifying. And do you have the right things in place in terms of you yourself to be able to analyze that deal. That is what I'm talking about when I talk about creative financing. So, like I said, if 2006 is something that you are looking to do and you want to do more creative ways of investing in real estate, this is the podcast that you need to be tapped into and tuned into to find and talk about. Well, I will talk about those things, but this is where you can listen in about some of those creative ways to be able to move forward and close more deals if that is what you plan to do for 2026. And also, don't forget, you can always go to my website, funds.neverloseadeal.com. It will be below this video if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are listening to the podcast notes will have that link. There, you can run numbers. So you can creatively do whatever you need to do to be able to see what those numbers look like. I tell people all the time, that's the great thing about the internet. You can run your own numbers, and I have the website for you to do that. So whether you're doing DSCR, fix the flip, fix the rent, there on that website, you can run your numbers, you can get an idea, you can have a gauge, so you can be that person who's like, hey, let me submit my information. These are my numbers. You get a term sheet, and voila, you can move on to your deal. How easy is that? So once again, go to funds.neverloseadeal.com. Like I said, on that website, you will get a whole bunch of information on things that I talked about here on this podcast, along with many calculators as well as analysis tools for you to be able to move forward with your next transaction. Until the next episode, this is Lorelia, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.